Hello, and welcome back to the Argyle Finance Solutions Summit. My name is Brittany Sullivan with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our esteemed speaker. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, which include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. To ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat, and we will address your questions at the end of the session. Also, be sure to subscribe to Argyle on YouTube for exclusive access to all of our past events. Now, without further ado, I would love to introduce Eric Schmidt, Vice President, XP&A Americas at SAP. We're excited to have Eric with us for his thought leadership and demo titled Unifying Insights and Planning with SAP Analytics Cloud. Welcome, Eric, and over to you.
Thanks, Brittany. And yes, welcome to everybody. And of course, great to be part of this event. So my name is Eric Schmidt. I lead what we call a Center of Excellence for Planning and Analysis. Been in this space for probably about 25 years. Pretty much have not done anything else than planning, profitability, legal consolidation, those types of use cases, always from a software perspective. I will use the next 40 minutes to talk you through a little bit of what we in SAP believe is required for finance transformation. So we'll start a little bit on a bigger picture of what are some of our customers moving in regards to finance, what are they changing, and then of course I'll go into specifically what are we doing in the space of planning and analysis, and then later on I'll show a live demo on how does that really look like for an end user in the system, and we can browse around a little bit in there. I'm open for any questions during the session, but please, we'll also be monitoring the Q&A chat, so also feel free to put some questions in there. I'll take a look at the end to answer them there. Okay, moving along. So first of all, it's important to realize that when you look at FP&A, of course, we are part of a much bigger play for many customers that are out there. And when you look at finance as a whole, there's many different topics like planning, but also closing the books. There's treasury, there's account reconciliation, there's the accounting system, there's profitability, there's merger acquisition. There's many different topics in the finance space. And pretty much for the last 25 years, you could say, hey, we have spent a lot of time on the operational side of finance, really the accounting side of the finance system. We spend a lot of time on compliance. New regulations have made us focus on compliance. And we've always been challenged on really being that strategic partner to the business, really that top of the pyramid that determines, hey, which products should we focus on? Should we go for an M&A? Should we maybe look at particular contract settings or customer channels? That has always been limiting from a finance perspective. And the reason, of course, is that we spend a lot of time on the bottom. That doesn't allow us to really have a lot of time on the top. And yes, of course, if you look at SAP, we are trying to flip that pyramid, because with SAP, we are able to help customers, first of all, on the bottom of the pyramid, on really higher efficiency and effectiveness in accounting and ERP, and then on top of it, compliance, and then really focus on the things that really matter to an organization. The survival of the organization lies in that strategic partnership that sits on the top. And then, of course, you get into the space of, is it better to go with best of breed, or should we go with more a suite type of an approach and go everything on a single platform? And those are the challenges that our customers are facing. But rest assured that we in SAP absolutely focus on the full pyramid, and we're focusing on unification of anything we do in finance. We realize there's a lot of competition out there, but of course, you should also realize if you're an SAP customer, then we will be the best in regards to integration, etc., from the full stack perspective. And it's also interesting if you really look at FP&A, XP&A, whatever you want to call this, and these slides are pretty much static for the last 25 years. We still see the same challenges in the finance area in regards of complexity in finance, in regards to single source of truth from a data perspective. We keep moving data from one siloed solution to another silo, to another solution fits from another vendor. We move data, we move master data, we move calculations, we move security among that platform. And then we buy reconciliation tools to reconcile all these different data platforms that we've created. Yeah. We, of course, also still allow a lot of the end user community to live in the world of Excel. We say, hey, you're more than welcome to take data from our source systems, put them in Excel, put your own spin on it, create some charts in Excel, and that's what we use for reporting purposes. And again, that means data duplication, master data duplication, no security, no auditability, etc. on that Excel type of environment. And then finally, and that's very specific to the planning space, we're still struggling on accuracy. We still see that customers are struggling to put driver-based in there, to use algorithms in regards to machine learning, AI principles in the planning space. And that is many times because no structured approach for planning is available to customers. So when we had an opportunity in SAP to start something new, this happened probably about 10 years ago, we got an opportunity to build a new platform around analytics. So we first of all said, hey, if you look at planning, of course, it's part of a bigger platform. It should include reporting, it should include predictive, it should include profitability. So when we're talking about analytics, we're talking about all these different components together on that platform. And then, of course, customers can use it for data collection. They can then take their data and validate that data, put validations in place, reconciliation in place, then look at insights, determine before I even do any action taking, before I do any planning, what should I focus on? Should I focus on product A or product B or customer C or customer X? To really have that insight in regards to allocations, to look at profitability by these different dimensions that I have in my organization. And then finally, use that insight and use that cleaning of data to really drive actions in the organization. That, of course, relates to forecasting, to setting budgets and planning, etc. And of course, when we created that, we said those components all need to be on the platform. And we build that and we call that SAP Analytics Cloud. And with that, you see we have currently probably about 8,000 customers on that platform. Some of them are very reporting focused type of customers. Others are using the full-fledged platform for predictive profitability, etc. in regards to planning. Now, if I look at the engine itself, of course, we need to realize that in the beginning, we still needed a modeling solution. So we built modeling capabilities, and that means that if you model, you build a model that has maybe an account structure, maybe has a product structure, maybe an organizational or company type of structure. And with that modeling, we talk about members, we talk about dimensions, we talk about hierarchies, alternative hierarchies, we talk about all the calculations and the security around all these different models that we need to put in place. When you're talking about planning, you need to also realize that we need workflow. We need to be able to send out these input templates to basically our end users, maybe for data entry, maybe for running scenarios, simulations, do what if scenarios from an end user perspective. We need to be able to approve, reject, maybe escalate type of budget requests. So there's a lot of calendaring and workflow capabilities. But also from day one, and this is quite unique, is of course everybody is currently talking about artificial intelligence, but when we started Analytics Cloud 10 years ago, we included AI and specifically the machine learning capabilities, the algorithms in regards to planning from day one into that platform. Not the full-fledged 50 algorithms. We decided to really build something that's for the planning user, for the planning business user to run algorithms in regards to time series, classification, regression, right into this solution. Now, we also focused, of course, on planning input forms. Now, we want to move people out of the Excel world into more of a structured approach in the browser. But yes, we also still have an Excel add-in that connects to these models and allows users to do data entry and run simulations from Excel. But they could also go into a browser and run from there and have a more modern look and feel on these applications. When we started this, there was a lot of talk about Click, Tableau, Power BI, those types of solutions in regards to visualizations. So also from day one, we included the full visualization capabilities right directly onto the platform. So again, The goal is to not move data, to not move master data, but run full analytics on that single platform. And that's why you see visualizations, you see booklets printing, you see mobile device support, you see all these different type of capabilities that we need from a reporting point of view. Very specific to planning is version control. We want to make sure that end users in your organization can run their own versions and do a what if simulation tomorrow and not wait for corporate to send out these versions. I can do a new what if today, share it to some of my team members, and then maybe throw it away or maybe publish this into the corporate catalog. And then in the heart of all of this, we have text capabilities. When you're talking planning, we need text capabilities in regards to why are we changing particular planning scenarios, but also, for example, for disclosure notes. And lately, we're very focused on generative AI, where we allow the Gen AI engine to run and create text based on the model, based on the data that we have in the particular scenarios. Of course, once we have the tool, once we have the platform, we can apply that platform to different use cases. And of course, you could say, hey, let's start with, for example, finance in the core of these use cases, but some other organizations start maybe in the workforce area in regards to maybe salary planning or headcount planning, supply and demand planning, sales, cost of goods sold, OPEX, CAPEX, strategic planning. All these different use cases can be together running on the platform. And of course, they are connected to each other. If I make a change in my average salary in a workforce plan, this will ripple through into a financial plan, into a P&L, balance sheet, cash flow, etc., all the way. So that interconnection between these models is very important in regards to the growth of the platform in an organization. Start small, but go anywhere. And we wouldn't be SAP if we wouldn't be able to also, of course, connect to the transactional systems that we have in place. It is very important to realize, again, in regards to data and master data, not to duplicate. So when we're talking about connections, specifically if you look at ECC or S4, we will reuse these objects like cost center object or maybe a company structure out of that particular S4 or ECC system for planning purposes in the financial planning space. But the same thing applies to SuccessFactors, Ariba, Concur, but also, of course, for example, Workday in regards to HCM. Integration to the backend systems, capabilities of pulling and pushing data, drilling through into these transactional systems is all available out of the box. And then finally, we spend a lot of time to make it easier for customers to implement these solutions, to say, hey, I don't need to build everything from scratch, but I can just use the pre-built content, the business content on the network to get started. And specifically, of course, if you look at things like financial planning, the fit between the business content and requirements from customers is very, very high. You can see that in the 80%, 90% range, quite easy to set these planning scenarios up. If you go into more specific industries, then of course, sales planning, cost of goods sold planning, OPEX are a little bit less of a fit. You can start with the business content, but there's probably a little bit more work to configure that to get your specific scenarios built into these use cases. But overall, I think it is important to see that we have the best tool in the world on an innovative platform where we can easily grow with customers in regards to also accuracy. You can start small, amount-based planning, then go to driver-based planning, then add an algorithm in there in regards to predictions. So really growing what you're going to use on the platform. And then, of course, from a use case perspective, same thing. Maybe start on financial planning or workforce planning, but grow and maybe create departmental plans and go into other lines of business that want planning capabilities. Now, let me show a little bit on the platform how the look and feel of that solution is. So let me move to my browser and assume you can still see this. If I log into Analytics Cloud, the first thing you'll notice is that this is all around, first of all, business intelligence. It's around planning. It's around profitability. Those are the main components of the platform. And when I log into the catalog, of course, I can see different stories. Now we call them stories. There are reports, there are dashboards. It's a bit of a mixture. And these could be SAP, they could be non-SAP, but from here, out of the catalog, I can drill into these particular components. And it could be, for example, in this case, I'll open up this particular chapter 9. And this allows me to really get the first impression of my organization. Of course, it's going to make some loading time, it makes some connection to particular systems, because we also need to realize that this, in some scenarios, is completely live connected into backend systems. So the first thing that I see here on the left side is some connections into, in this case, an S4 system, where I connect live and see, hey, there is some reporting there, actual and forecast. These are both out of the S4 system. There's an H.K and H.P table. We're comparing them there. But I can also see there's a sustainability score. In this case, it's coming out of the data warehouse. And so this is a live connect into the data warehouse where we do more in regards to sustainability. And on the bottom, I see a live connection into success factors, where we're looking at headcount reporting and we do some calculations in regards to headcount risk around particular topics. So those are the first things that I see. On the right side, I see more of planning related information. I see that we have a revenue plan, including some projects, but they are split out into different product categories. And I'm comparing an actual to a budget. So of course, I'm up or below a particular scenario. For specifically retail CPG type of companies, we did some advanced capabilities in regards to time dimension. For many companies, it's a standard calendar where you have months, quarters, years. But for retail, it might be interesting to really to be able to split these times into weekly buckets or daily buckets and compare year over year, things like winter season or fall or Thanksgiving. These types of attributes on a time dimension are valuable to that type of reporting. I can also see that in the system, we're connecting external sources. In this case, I'm connecting to Reuters for some kind of regulation index. And these indices, of course, are helping me later on in a planning scenario to create additional accuracy in regards to that. Again, I could also pick a different one. If I look, for example, at the inflation index, these are some inflation index coming from Moody's, where they're expecting how are these particular indices going to hit particular categories of my business. Of course, you could also see this as tariffs that we're all talking about lately. And again, these are impacting the current forecast that we are running. When we're running these forecasts, of course, I also am able to do detailed variance analysis. Is this variance because of just actual versus budget, or is it because of price? Is it because of volume? Is it because of the mix within the product category? Is this related to currency conversion? And these types of calculations in regards to variance could be very, very detailed and very, very granular. And then finally, what you see here on the screen as well is, of course, the capabilities of version control. We are currently running a few versions. We're saying, yes, there is a current compare version. This is pretty much last year's version. And basically, currently, the driver is not looking too good. We are below last year. And of course, there's a variance. But if I look at my optimistic scenario, it will be a positive impact. And if I look at pessimistic, I will be slightly below last year. So all these different versions are also there for you to create yourself or your team or from a public corporate perspective. And realizing that these versions could also be created through Monte Carlo simulations. So you could also put things like probability curves on drivers, and these drivers then together could create probability curves also on the outcome, like a revenue or like a net income in that regards. Now let me drill a little bit further down into the system, and I'll probably, again, on the bottom, I'll see many different components, many different use cases from workforce to CapEx to balance sheet planning. It's all there. But to keep it somewhat straightforward, I'll go into a profit and loss statement that just shows me a little bit of information around that particular scenario. And in the first thing, of course, I notice is the table on the top. That table on the top shows me a very short profit and loss statement with some key performance indicators around gross margin and operating margin. But it also shows me my actuals. And again, in this case, it is connected to S4, but I also see a forecast, I see a strategic plan, a longer range plan out there as well. What I also see on the right side is a little bit of reporting, the visualization capabilities of the platform, where I see a little bit of, hey, how do I relate my actuals to my forecast and my strategic plan? Text capabilities. People are commenting on this particular scenario. On the bottom, I see my predictive capabilities kicking in, just a sales over time chart. But these little areas where you see the triangle areas, are pretty much automatic forecasting algorithms. In this case, it's triple exponential that really shows how are these lines going forward into the future, into 2026, or for actual perspective, of course, later on in this year. Heat maps, and again, also realizing anything, of course, is clickable. If I click on Europe for a particular product category, everything else in the dashboard will change. So I can make these selections through charting. I could also, of course, use these input controls on the left side to make that selection. So the drilling through structures is fully automatically there. But at the end, I could also drill, and that is quite unique, of course, for an SAP system. If I look at this particular cell for my sales for 2025 on the actual side, and I look at the linking, I can also drill back into an S4 system. So to realize that we are very closely connected to the ERP, that could be ECC, that could be BW, that could be S4. And when I drill, I see document level ID data into that S4 system. So closely connected from a data and master data perspective to these transactional systems that are out there. Now, what else can we see? For example, if I click on the forecast and realizing now I'm on a very high level number, but I can ask the system for what we call smart insights, is to run an algorithm to take a look on what are some of the dimensions underneath that top number and what are some of the rankings around these numbers. So for example, I can see that from a top contributor perspective, the US is my number one contributor in the perspective of the organization structure. South Africa is the second one and Argentina is the third one. Same for another dimension is my product structure in this scenario, where I can see Earth is my number one product. And so the algorithm and the smart insights allows us to, instead of me searching for particular insights, the system will prompt me for particular scenarios that are interesting for me to look at. I could also take this number and do some ad hoc analysis myself. So keeping the 3 million inside, I click on what we call exploration, and now I can just like a pivot table in Excel, I can say, hey, I don't want to see all products, I just want to see it first person star, role game, sports, and maybe what I want to do is I want to include, so in total it's about 2.9 million, put the product into the dimension, and now I see 3 specific numbers for each category. Now, this is not the best chart, so let me maybe ask the system to automatically suggest me something else. And in this case, it comes back with the bar chart. I could also ask, hey, include some other dimensionality, maybe from an organization perspective. I want to look at Europe. I want to specifically look at Canada and the US, and maybe put those ones all together into the chart as well. Maybe add another few to get a little bit more an interesting visualization. But in this case, it shows me the bar chart. Maybe I don't like this. Maybe I pick something which is a little bit easier on the eye, maybe the cluster bubble. And it just shows me, hey, the biggest bubble is first person star in the other region is the big one. Or maybe something more new, modern is maybe Marimekko, where I see, hey, this first person star is the big one. And again, from this type of charting, I can then create new reports or push this out to a mobile device or an iPad or however I want to consume these particular objects downstream into the organization. Now, enough of reporting capabilities. Of course, I can put this into booklets, into printing, into subscription type of booklets as well. But let me move on to a little bit of planning. Now, in any cell in the system, so I can go bottoms up or tops down. I can change, of course, if I say plus 10% on that top number, the system will automatically disaggregate based on existing trend to all the members underneath. And I can do this on any cell. I could also say, hey, now sales goes to 3.9, but maybe my gross sales should go to 4 million. So I can do from calculated accounts to leave members. I can just disaggregate depending on where I am in the system. I could also say, hey, maybe this should not be calculated like this, but maybe I want to use a little bit more of an algorithm type of an approach. So if I open up the forecast and maybe go to Q4 of 2025, and then I could kickstart my predictive forecasting algorithm. And again, this is from an end user, somewhat simplistic type of an algorithm use, but if I say, hey, let me predict all the way to the end of this year, let me look at some of the algorithms available to me at this time. I could say linear or maybe triple exponential would be more interesting to me. I can see there's actual data in the system since 2018. I'll ask the system to preview. And basically, of course, it will run that particular algorithm on that data footprint, and it will give me a preview on where it will go into the future. Now, it shows me the full timeline, but let me show a little bit the final portion of that timeline, where, of course, because of the triple exponential smoothing algorithm, it keeps the trend, it keeps the seasonality in there, it keeps fluctuations in there all the way into the future. And if I like that, I click OK, and now this particular data point will be saved into the database, and that's what I'm going to use in the system. Now, again, this is a simple example of predictive. There is a lot more on the system, because customers want to run this in regards to classification. They want to run this with influencing factors like macroeconomic factors like regulation index, inflation index, fuel index, whatever we have, competitive indices that are on that platform. But just to give you a flavor that also an end user can run this on any table that they have in their particular view. To finish it off and to go a little bit further than that, of course, this is still in the one screen. This is still very manual. I'm entering sales, I'm entering gross sales. I could run the same thing, but using more a driver-based component where I say, hey, on the bottom, I see a small table. These are some global assumptions on the model where I say, hey, this particular product category of first-person star, I want to run as 120%. Maybe this impacts, of course, my sales, my material cost, etc. In roll game, we are not expecting too much, so I don't want to run that on 100%, but I'm going to run that on an index of 80%, or 8%, whatever it is. And then I run this scenario by just pressing the simulate button. And now there are calculations that will kick in that, of course, are going to impact sales, cost of sales, discount, rebates, etc., whatever that is. So full impact on my full P&L that I have in that system. Now, also realizing that anything I've just done, is always auditable. So I made a lot of changes to this forecast category. I can already see there's a small star behind it. So if I would right click on it and I ask for history on that particular version, I can see these are all the different changes that we made to the particular scenario. I can always go back to an original stand, so I can always roll back to a particular state of that version, and the system will automatically roll back for me. And I could also decide, hey, I want to throw this all away, or I want to publish this. In this case, you can see basically I'm back to my index of 100, full rollback, that's there in the system. And maybe my final point is to say, hey, I'm finished. I'm going to go back. I didn't like what I did. I'll revert back all to the original data. And that's how I'm going to go with the system. Now, to finish this off, let me go back to my slide that I showed you earlier, just to summarize a little bit what you've seen in the slide in the demo, is that first of all, there is a rich tool, there's a rich platform that has BI components, it has planning components, profitability components in there around modeling, workflow, predictions, planning, etc. That is very important. And of course, we are innovating on a daily basis on that platform, specifically now, of course, when we're looking at AI capabilities, Gen AI capabilities that we're adding to the platform. What you'll also see on the right side is that we have many different use cases that we can support. If you look at our 8,000 customers in total, maybe 5,000 are in that planning space. These customers are going from full flats, basically every use case that they can find, to maybe some start with HR, some start with finance, etc. And again, very unique to SAP, we are fully connected to transactional systems, operational systems that you have in your organization. And I want to emphasize one more time that that is not only for SAP. We, of course, connect to anything that is non-SAP, Workday, whatever we have, Salesforce, any system that's out there. Again, SAP fully integrated, data master, data security, other systems, maybe some through OData, but there's definitely an integration connection. Now, Brittany, with that, I'm at my end of what I wanted to show and would like to open it up if there's any question to answer that.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Eric, for such an insightful presentation. As a reminder, audience members can still enter. Go ahead and review a few that came through. Eric, this first question asks, what are some of the key advantages of using a single platform like SAC for BI planning and predictive analytics?
Yeah, I think that is, I think it all comes back to this first slide, is that, and after 25 years of presenting this, I think this first one is very important, this triangle. And this is such a simple principle, is that there are many competitors out there, and those are all great solutions. There's nothing wrong with all these solutions from all these different vendors out there. But one problem they are not able to fix is that, yes, they're great in one component, and that could be planning. The next one is very good in legal consolidation. The next one is very, very good in reporting. The other one has a great data platform. The problem with all of that is that we continuously keep moving data among the organizations to different solutions from different vendors with different architectures. And there is a disadvantage. And that disadvantage is that along the way, we're losing the context of the data. It takes time to move the data. We're creating inaccuracies in that data. And so from an SAP perspective, it is quite easy because we have an accounting system, we have the operational layer in place, and we are just connecting analytics on top of that. And with analytics, we're not only looking at planning, we're also looking at reporting, we're looking at profitability, we're looking at predictive, all on that platform. And that, of course, allows us to be much faster because I don't need to move data, I don't need to move master data. And those are somewhat simple. But then look at security. Yeah, if I'm defining cost center security in an S4 system, any other planning solution I would need to redefine, and many times somewhat slightly different, redefine the cost center security. Of course, in an SAP world, you don't need to do that. If you look at indirect cash flow calculations that we define in an S4 system, that indirect cash flow method, yeah, we can apply in an Analytics Cloud type of scenario. So that's where you see where we are much better than any of the competition. Yes, of course, we're all fighting to make sure that in a waterfall chart, we support 30 colors in a waterfall chart. But the real differentiation with SAP lies in the integration, lies into the platform, the unification of data and master data. That's where we are so different.
Great, thank you. This next question, how does SAC support scenario planning and what if analysis to improve overall financial agility?
Yeah, so to realize that of course from a what if scenario, the world has changed. If I look at all on-premises solutions in the SAP world, that is BPC, versions were pretty much controlled by the IT department, and if you wanted a new version, you would have to ask them, and hopefully in a few weeks you got a new version. Now version management has moved to an end user type of paradigm. So if I'm in that user look and feel, if I'm on that forecast and I look at that version and I want to create a new version, I, for example, say, hey, copy that version. I say, hey, call this my what if. I click, okay, maybe start from a copy, put it in the category for forecast, so it will also automatically put up that type of currency conversion. And basically, I got a new version in the system. And that version will automatically show up in the system. And of course, if I now look, currently this is filtered on my forecast, but let me add that new version in there, because I can't even remember how I called it. But here, what if? Maybe take strategic off. But now I've got a new version in the system. So the version paradigm has fully moved into an end user capacity. And for example, in that now I can see forecast and what if they are the same, but maybe in this what if I want to go to a 2 million net income and then disaggregate through the structures all the way down. So now I've got two versions that are there. And again, if I take these two versions, of course, I could also easily quickly add a column next to it that maybe shows the difference between these two versions. Hopefully that gives you a little bit, if I do maybe percent difference or maybe maybe percent difference. Okay, so what is the difference between the two? So very easy for me to adjust, create new versions, create different drivers. Maybe one is drivers is based on volume, the other one is based on maybe an inflation. I can easily add drivers and subtract drivers. So the paradigm of versioning is very much changed in the world of cloud, and specifically in Analytics Cloud, it's very much an end user type of capability. And also add to that these versions, of course, are shareable among team members. So if I, for example, look also at the collaboration, I could see there's a few activities going on, but I can now say, hey, there's a new version. I add a new chat, maybe with John T. or Paco, whoever's on my team, share that version, share the screen that I'm on, and they can comment on this new particular version. So also, again, we didn't show much collaboration, but realize there's a lot of collaboration going on the tool as well.
Excellent. Thank you. And we have time for a couple more questions that came through. This next question asks, how do these augmented analytics capabilities differ from traditional analytics tools?
Yeah, that depends a bit on what augmented, what that means. But I think if I explain that in the world of predictive, maybe I can quickly find a slide related, because it's quite an interesting slide in the world of predictive. Yeah, maybe this one is a quick one. Hopefully it shows.
Is that in the world of planning.
And this talks a little bit about growth of our customers. Yeah, we have many customers out there. Yes, they are doing planning, and who knows, maybe they do it in a systematic approach, and they plan, they enter some sales numbers, they enter some salary, some cost, and they calculate the beta. Yeah. Of course, then when you're talking about driver-based planning, the only thing we're doing is we're saying, hey, now I'm adding drivers, a layer below the amount. That could be units, it could be average prices, global assumption, etc. So this is what we would call driver-based planning. But then if you look at the more predictive machine learning AI type of planning, then of course we're going to use algorithms. And a simple algorithm would be forecasting algorithms, time series forecasting algorithms, where I look at historical data, historical seasonality, historical trends, and I'm just putting that forward into the future. And of course, then you get the whole discussion about, first you're showing what has happened, and now you're going to show what could happen if I just continue my business as is. But then you also need to know that if you're going to continue, the world is changing. Yeah, so you need to know what are some of these influences that I see out there. And that could be inflation, it could be tariffs, it could be competition, it could be that the quality of the solutions that are putting out there. And so all the things that classification algorithms will bring is these types of drivers, external and internal, that impact my business. And then, of course, we allow the system to take these drivers and put them back into a driver-based model. So now in the driver-based model, I see, yes, drivers, which could be volume or financial or non-financial, but I also see factors like marketing spend, like market size and inflation in there. And now I've got a much better accuracy in the result. And then if you go one step further, and again, this is all growth on the platform, you could also say that, hey, the chance that inflation stays at 2% is maybe 50%, but that it goes up to 4%, maybe the likelihood that is 20%, and that it goes down to 1%, there's also a likelihood for that. So then you can put these probability curves on the drivers, and then with the probability of the drivers, I can also calculate the probability of a particular outcome, and that could be, of course, my net income. And that's what we call Monte Carlo simulation on top of drivers. And so this shows a little bit the new world of what we're doing in the planning space. And that doesn't mean that our customers are all already on the Monte Carlo classification. No, but it allows them to grow into that area. And it comes back. If I have to spend less time on data, cleansing, validation, reconciliation, copying of data, I have more time to spend it on increasing accuracy on the plan. And hopefully that meant that was the question on augmented, but this is a little bit how we implement that in Analytics Cloud.
Thank you, Eric. And we have one last question to close us out. How difficult is the initial setup or integration of SAC with existing SAP environments?
Yeah, that question is all depending on the use case. And this is a bit of and again, I've been doing this long enough and to also realize that we've talked about pre-built content or templates or blueprints for years. Yeah? And it was always more of a sales tool than anything else. It pretty much meant for many customers, it still meant that your business is different and you had to start from scratch. So we need to realize that if you talk about financial planning on top of an S4 system, so you're maybe an S4 customer, you're looking at cost center planning on the GL level type of a thing. That particular use case is easy stuff, and building in a matter of weeks, you can go live with those types of templates, because pretty much we have the master data, we have the security, we can pretty much connect to the S4 system, we have actual data, and we can plan right away. Yeah, and many times that financial planning is limited on calculations. Yes, you can then add your calculations, but in general, you could start planning on cost center, GL, profit center level on day one. If you go into a scenario of sales planning, it's a different scenario, because sales could be completely different for a bank than it is for a CPG company or a retail company. So in the sales planning area, yes, we can of course talk that we can integrate, and we do have business content, and many of the business content packages are coming from partners, but the fit rate will be lower, and definitely is not a good fit in comparison to, for example, financial planning. So be careful. Yes, finance easy, sales more complex. And of course, if you go into the world of OPEX and CAPEX, again, very specific to customers. If you go into the world of workforce planning, employee planning, it's straightforward. Again, I wouldn't say it's exactly the same method as finance, but customers want to do this by position, they want to do this by grade, or maybe they want to do this by employee. But the configuration capabilities of workforce planning is fairly limited. Nobody's going to do this completely different than anybody else. And even in an industry-specific scenario, of course, workforce planning is still somewhat the same between a bank or a retail. So hopefully that answers a little bit the question. So again, we are also absolutely in the world of faster. It doesn't take 6 months to build these models. You can build models in a matter of weeks and go live in a matter of months. And it also depends a little bit on where you're coming from. If you're currently an existing BPC customer, it is very, very straightforward to move that into the world of SAC. We can take these models, replicate them into SAC, and you're up and running in a matter of weeks.
Great. Well, thank you so much again, Eric, for such an excellent thought leadership demo. I also want to thank everyone else for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be made available on demand following the event. Our next session will begin shortly at 2:40 Eastern, which will be a keynote titled The Journey to the AI Economy, Harnessing the Potential of Web3 and AI. Please click the join button that will appear on your screen to be redirected, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you again, Eric.
Thanks, Brittany.